And I'm asked to summarize my impressions from this rich 2 days in the line of what kind of research would we need? What would be the essence of what can we ask researchers to contribute to the development of outreach work in Europe and maybe beyond? And that's difficult. So I will give you some unrelated remarks. I took notes along the 2 days. I have to sleep over maybe of these to get it in a more structured and more meaningful way. But starting from what the Crown Prince said in the opening speech, he said, what concerns one directly affects all individuals in society. I think there's space for the division between what in academia is traditionally called the line between basic research and applied research. So what the Prince is referring to is more the basic research, the knowledge about populations, the knowledge about inequality, the knowledge of consequences and impacts of what Kate Prickett showed us this morning, the impact of inequality on the whole society. I particularly liked the slide with not even the richest people benefit from unequal society. So maybe that's more the job of the basic research that we all need to do the job. We all need to make an argument why we do our job like this and not in another way. So that brings me to knowing what you're doing, as Walter also said, is the core of the profession. And so that's more related to applied research. And the Crown Prince also spoke of outreach workers as being social change agents. Walter added these outreach workers might be seismograph for social change. So how can we make use of that, like having a tool, like a societal tool, like outreach work, very close to populations that are under stress of changes, feels changes maybe earlier than other parts of society. How can we make good use of this role of outreach work? And of course, we're under stress there from another side, like Minister Bent Höje articulated that. We need early identification of youth at risk. So that brings us into this, Walter called it the control and support differential. Like, or Joanna called it, are we the iron arm of the government, having our ears on the train rails? And for who are we a seismograph? What are we immune to the ever-growing idea of we need to catch them earlier? I've been hearing that since all my professional life. We need to catch them earlier to be more efficient. And in consequence, this means we need to identify the risk factors earlier. Are we really happy with the consequences this has, or probably has? Some outreach workers are in a better position to fight against this data collection, early detection of problems. But in the UK, for example, we heard from Graham this afternoon that outreach workers are keeping records. They have to pass on to a prevention unit that collects all the data on all youth, scores them, and tells outreach workers the 50 highest scoring people on a risk scale, you need to work with them. And I think we need to safeguard ourselves against this newly arising feasibility and predictability obsession. Sometimes I feel when I'm looking around me in research, I feel like beamed back into the 70s or 60s with all this belief in feasibility, in quantitative data and predictability of human behavior. That's a naive belief that we've been overcoming in the 70s, but it's coming back and we're falling back into, like, we believe in more data will make us identify people earlier and we will be better able to serve them. There's an incredible future belief in that is no longer true. If you ask economists what the economy will be next week, and they will shrug their shoulders and say, we don't know. Why should we in social sciences be able to predict the future if they can't? They have some really hard currency to count on. We have human behavior, which is never predictable. There's probabilities. Okay, Kate showed us the fatal mechanisms of what it can do to people's lives, what it can do to society, what harm it can do to have income inequality. Of course, that throws us back on this, what Hans-Erik Rasmussen yesterday called symbolic violence. Can we avoid being part of symbolic violence that consists in labeling and shaming people or identifying who will be the future perpetrators? And of course there comes in this mediator role. Walter, you were calling that a mediator role. Hans-Erik was calling it an advocacy role. So we need to think back on this advocacy role. What does that mean in how we cooperate with research, with this ever-growing big data fantasies? So we need to safeguard us, and I think outreach work has reached certain standards, like not keeping records of young people without their consents. So I think there's standards there have been consensus ones. So we need to go back and insist on these standards. We cannot work without that. And of course, what research can also contribute maybe, and you will have to ask researchers for that, is the discourse and practice gap Cherry told us about in Hong Kong. That sounded familiar to me. There was nothing strange, like people believing what they're doing and need some assistance from outside, an outsider's view to know what they are actually doing. I think that can be a fruitful cooperation field between research and practitioners. So Else, Christine Hübner-Berg and Edwin Wibove were speaking of scientific allies. Where can we find them? I think outreach work can find them in applied research. So ideally, you would demand of me as a researcher to prove the efficiency of your work. But how can I do that without going for the indicator business? So, and there comes in another problem in academia. This is very low currency applied research. Try to build a career on applied research. Good luck with that. Have you ever applied for European funds for European applied research project? Good luck with that. What is counting is in academia is hard currency, is basic research. We are having many problems in applying together with organizations from the welfare, social health field, together with research to get acknowledged as doing proper research, because applied research is not very high on the agenda. So if you are running short-term projects, as you are telling me, how should I prove long-term effects? So there's also a structural gap what research can do for outreach work. If research and outreach work are both based on very short-term, short-sighted policies, then long-term effects that are always demanded for by policymakers are very hard to prove. If the project's not there anymore and I'm not there anymore, who should prove? So a tendency, a job for research would be caution against the big hopes and help avoid the horror scenarios of collecting big data for these fantasies of early intervention and early detection of potentially risk young people. And of course, one way would be like the old action research reaction we had as a counter movement in the 60s and 70s to this belief in big data and feasibility. We had a movement in science. You might know that better than me. I was a child then. Action research. Let's do teams together. Team up with one researcher in your small team and understand yourself as researchers. Because you're the seismograph, you have the ear on the rails. So that would be a potential counter strategy to go back to old models of action research. But to stick our heads together, we need some platforms to invent the questions, to find the common questions, the common interests. And therefore this conference is so valuable, because it makes researchers come out of their comfort zone of telling the old, oh, it is difficult to tell and we don't know anything, and be very concrete. And I think we need these platforms where these two worlds can connect, can exchange. I've been asked in one of the breaks, do you know any good work on what is called the white underclass in Germany without the problem-oriented approach? And I said, no, I don't. So that's a wonderful impact for a researcher. Hey, there's no work on white underclass people. So we need these platforms. Gives everyone the opportunity to exchange. Therefore, I thank you again for the invitation. Thank you all.